What I am about to share with you is not just theory pulled from abstract concepts or academic papers that have no connection to real life. It is a pattern I have observed and researched after years of studying the psychology of highly sensitive people, empaths, and emotional intelligence. A pattern that emerges again and again in the experiences of those who feel deeply. And it explains why empaths transform in ways that seem almost supernatural to outsiders, ways that defy easy explanation and challenge everything we think we know about human nature. If you have ever wondered why you can sense someone's emotional state before they say a word, why you walk into a room and immediately know the emotional atmosphere, this video will give you the answers you have been searching for. If you have ever questioned why crowded spaces drain you in ways that do not seem to affect others, why you leave social gatherings feeling exhausted while everyone else seems energized, this video will explain what is happening beneath the surface. If you have ever wondered why you sometimes feel physical sensations that mirror what people around you are experiencing, why you feel a knot in your stomach when someone else is anxious or a heaviness in your chest when someone is grieving, this video will provide the scientific framework to understand what is actually happening in your brain and body. Researchers are only beginning to map the neurological basis of empathic sensitivity, but what they have discovered so far is nothing short of extraordinary. Studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, have shown that empathic individuals often have mirror neuron systems that are more active than average, meaning that their brains are literally wired to simulate the experiences of others at a much deeper level. Mirror neurons are the brain's way of simulating others' experiences, allowing us to understand what someone else is feeling by recreating that feeling within ourselves. And in empaths, this simulation happens at a level that is both extraordinary and, at times, overwhelming, creating a depth of connection that most people will never experience. Today, we are diving deep into what happens inside an empath's mind when they are hurt repeatedly, a journey that will take us through the hidden architecture of the empath's psyche, and what you learn may fundamentally change how you view your gift, transforming your understanding of yourself and your place in the world. To understand this fully, we need to examine what the research actually tells us about human behavior and relationships, because the patterns we observe are not random, but deeply rooted in our biology and psychology. Studies in social psychology, behavioral neuroscience, and attachment theory all point to the same fundamental truth. Human behavior is far more predictable than most people realize, and understanding these patterns gives you significant advantages in every area of life. The research is clear that human beings are driven by deep-seated needs for connection, autonomy, and meaning, and that these needs shape our behavior in ways that are often invisible to us. Research by Dr. Roy Baumeister on belongingness motivation demonstrates that humans have a fundamental need to connect with others, a need that is as basic as the need for food or water. This need is not just psychological, not just a desire for companionship. It is biological, wired into our brains through millions of years of evolution. Social isolation activates the same threat response systems as physical danger, meaning that being alone is literally perceived by our nervous system as a threat to our survival. But this need for connection exists in constant tension with our equally fundamental need for autonomy, the desire to be independent and in control of our own lives. This tension between connection and autonomy is at the heart of many relationship struggles, explaining why we both crave intimacy and fear losing ourselves in it. Dr. Jack Bram's research on reactance theory shows that when people feel their freedom is threatened, they experience psychological reactance, a state that motivates them to restore their freedom. This explains why people often want something more when they feel it might be taken away, why the forbidden fruit is always the most tempting. It also explains why telling someone they cannot have something often makes them want it more, why restrictions can actually increase desire. On the neurological level, research using functional MRI has revealed that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, a discovery that has profound implications for understanding human behavior. This is not metaphorical or poetic, not a figure of speech. The anterior cingulate cortex and insula, which process physical pain, also activate during social exclusion, meaning that being rejected actually hurts in a very real, physical sense. This explains why emotional wounds can feel as intense as physical ones, why a broken heart can feel like a broken bone, and why social threats can trigger such powerful responses, because they are literally activating our pain systems. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research on social neuroscience, presented in his book Social, demonstrates that our brains are wired to prioritize social information above almost everything else. We are constantly scanning our environment for social cues, threats, and opportunities, reading the faces and body language of everyone around us. This means that social dynamics are not just interesting sidelines to human existence, not just a pleasant diversion. They are one of our brain's primary concerns, a central focus of our neural activity. What this means practically is that the patterns we observe in relationships are not random, not accidents of circumstance. They follow predictable psychological laws that can be understood and anticipated. The person who seems less interested often becomes more attractive due to the scarcity principle, because we value what is rare and difficult to obtain. The one who walks away often becomes more valued due to loss aversion, because we fear losing what we have more than we desire gaining something new. The one who maintains emotional stability while others react becomes perceived as higher status, because emotional control is a marker of power and competence. Understanding these laws does not make you manipulative, does not make you a schemer who uses people for your own gain. It makes you informed, aware of the forces that shape human behavior. And in a world where emotional intelligence determines success more than raw IQ, where the ability to navigate relationships is more valuable than any technical skill, this information is essential, a key that opens doors. The distinction between manipulation and wisdom is intent, the purpose behind the knowledge. Manipulation uses this knowledge to exploit others, to gain advantage at their expense. Wisdom uses it to protect yourself and create genuine connections, to build relationships that are healthy and reciprocal. Understanding what happens inside an empath's mind when they are hurt repeatedly is just the beginning, the first step on a journey of transformation. The real power comes from application, from taking this knowledge and using it to change your life. So here is what I want you to do with the information we have explored today, the practical steps that will take you from understanding to transformation. First, identify your patterns. Whether you relate more to the empath's journey, the avoidance struggle, the dynamics of manipulation, or the behaviors we have examined, awareness is your starting point, the foundation upon which everything else is built. Take 5 minutes right now and write down the patterns you recognize in your own behavior and in your relationships, the repetitions that you have noticed but never fully understood. Be honest with yourself, because this is not about judgment, but about understanding. This is for your eyes only, a private record of your own journey. Second, practice the pause. Before reacting emotionally to any situation today, before speaking or acting, take one breath and ask yourself, is this my old pattern operating? Or is this a conscious choice? That single moment of awareness, repeated consistently, changes everything over time, rewiring your brain and creating new habits. It is the difference between being controlled by your emotions and controlling them. Third, set one boundary this week, one limit that you have been avoiding. Just one, not a radical change, but a small step. Make it small but meaningful, something that matters to you. Notice how it feels, the emotions that arise. Notice how others respond, the reactions that emerge. This is your training ground for bigger shifts, a place to practice and learn. Research on assertiveness shows that skills develop through progressive practice, just like physical muscles, through consistent effort and repetition. The psychology we have explored today is not just theory, not just interesting ideas to ponder. It is a practical toolkit for navigating human relationships more effectively, for understanding yourself more deeply, and for creating the life you actually want, a life that reflects your true values and needs. Use it wisely, with compassion for yourself and others. Use it ethically, with respect for the dignity of every person. And use it to build the connections that deserve your energy, the relationships that are healthy, reciprocal, and fulfilling. What happens inside an empath's mind when they are hurt repeatedly is a journey that takes them through 3 distinct phases, each with its own challenges and opportunities. The first phase is the unaware empath, the starting point where most empaths begin their journey without any understanding of what is happening to them. In this phase, you feel everything intensely, your emotions running deep and wide. You absorb other people's emotions without realizing it, taking on their feelings as if they were your own. You often mistake other people's feelings for your own, unable to distinguish between what you are feeling and what you have absorbed from others. During this phase, empaths are unintentional, emotional sponges, absorbing the emotional states of everyone around them without any conscious awareness of what is happening. This makes them magnets for energy vampires, narcissists, and anyone seeking an emotional host, because they are naturally receptive and giving. You give endlessly because you have not yet learned that your sensitivity is a finite resource that requires protection and replenishment, that you cannot pour from an empty cup. The psychological mechanism at play here is emotional contagion without boundaries, a phenomenon that is both powerful and dangerous. Studies by Hatfield, Cacioppo, and Rapson on emotional contagion show that some individuals are naturally more susceptible to catching others' emotions, their nervous systems more open to the emotional states of those around them. Empaths are at the extreme end of this spectrum, their susceptibility far greater than average. Without awareness, this becomes a significant liability rather than the gift it can become, because the empath is constantly overwhelmed by emotions that are not theirs. The unaware empath lives in a state of chronic emotional overload, absorbing the stress, anxiety, and pain of others without any way to protect themselves. They may feel exhausted after social interactions, drained by conversations that others found energizing. They may experience physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or digestive issues that have no apparent medical cause. They may feel anxious or depressed without understanding why, their mood shifting with the emotional atmosphere around them. This is the phase where many empaths begin to feel broken, wondering why life seems so much harder for them than for others. They may try to suppress their sensitivity, to become tougher, only to find that this approach leads to even more suffering. The unaware empath is like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the emotional currents of everyone around them, unable to find their own direction. The second phase is the overwhelmed empath, the breaking point where everything becomes too much. This is where the cumulative weight of everything you have absorbed finally becomes too heavy to carry, where the dam finally breaks. Many empaths describe this phase as hitting an emotional wall, a point beyond which they cannot continue as they have been. You might experience complete burnout, a state of total exhaustion that leaves you unable to function. You might experience chronic fatigue, a persistent tiredness that sleep cannot cure. You might experience persistent anxiety, a constant low-level fear that colors everything. Or you might experience depressive episodes, a profound sadness that seems to have no cause. The psychological term for this is empathic distress fatigue, a condition that is remarkably similar to compassion fatigue observed in healthcare professionals who give too much of themselves for too long. Research by Figley on compassion fatigue shows that individuals in caregiving roles often experience this phenomenon when the emotional demands of their work exceed their resources, when they have given more than they have to give. But for empaths, this happens across all life domains, not just professional caregiving, because they are caregiving emotionally, often without conscious choice, in every interaction they have. The overwhelmed empath has been carrying too much for too long, and their nervous system is finally breaking down. This phase is where many empaths either break down completely or begin a profound transformation, because the suffering they experience forces them to change. The suffering is real and often severe, a crushing weight that seems impossible to bear. But it is also the forge in which your greatest strengths are developed, the fire that tempers your spirit. The overwhelmed empath is like a person who has been running for miles without stopping, their legs finally giving out beneath them. They can no longer continue as they have been, but they do not yet know how to be different. This is the crucible of transformation, the moment of crisis that forces change. The third phase is the integrated empath, the destination where the empath finally finds balance and power. The integrated empath has learned to use their sensitivity as a tool rather than being used by it, to harness their gift rather than being overwhelmed by it. They have established boundaries without becoming cold or disconnected, protecting themselves without losing their warmth. They have developed what psychologist Dr. Judith Orloff calls healthy detachment, the ability to sense emotions without necessarily absorbing them, to be aware without being consumed. The integrated empath can walk into a room full of tension and recognize the emotional atmosphere without becoming overwhelmed by it. They can listen to someone's pain without taking it on as their own. They can care deeply without sacrificing themselves in the process. This is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about maintaining compassion while protecting your own well-being. The research on mindfulness and emotional regulation strongly supports this transformation, showing that it is possible to change your relationship with your emotions. Studies by Gross on emotion regulation show that individuals who develop reappraisal skills can experience emotions without being controlled by them, can feel without being overwhelmed. This is the empath's ultimate upgrade, maintaining the gift of sensitivity while gaining the protection of boundaries, keeping the superpower while losing the vulnerability. The integrated empath has learned to honor their sensitivity while also protecting themselves from its downsides. They know when to engage and when to step back, when to give and when to preserve their energy. They have found the balance that makes their sensitivity a strength rather than a burden. What happens inside an empath's mind when they are hurt repeatedly is a journey of transformation that is both painful and beautiful, a process that strips away illusions and reveals the truth beneath. The empath who has been hurt repeatedly begins to see patterns they once missed, the repetitions that were always there but were hidden by hope. They begin to recognize the difference between love and obligation, between connection and dependence, between compassion and self-sacrifice. They begin to understand that not everyone deserves unlimited access to their heart, that trust must be earned through consistency, not words. This is a painful realization because it requires letting go of the fantasy that everyone can be saved, that love alone is enough to transform someone. But it is also a liberating realization because it frees the empath from the impossible burden of saving everyone else. The integrated empath has learned that they can care deeply without being responsible for other people's choices, that they can offer support without taking on the weight of someone else's life. They have learned that boundaries are not walls but gates, designed to let in what is healthy and keep out what is harmful. They have learned that their sensitivity is not a weakness to be hidden, but a gift to be honored, a source of wisdom and connection that sets them apart. This is the power of the integrated empath, the ability to feel deeply without being destroyed by those feelings. It is a power that is earned through suffering and forged in the fires of experience, and it is a power that changes everything. The psychology we have explored today is not just theory, not just interesting ideas to ponder. It is a practical toolkit for navigating human relationships more effectively, for understanding yourself more deeply, and for creating the life you actually want, a life that reflects your true values and needs. Use it wisely, with compassion for yourself and others. Use it ethically, with respect for the dignity of every person. And use it to build the connections that deserve your energy, the relationships that are healthy, reciprocal, and fulfilling. Subscribe to Human Behavior Intelligence for more research-backed insights into human behavior, for more deep dives into the hidden patterns that shape our lives. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is struggling to understand their own sensitivity or the behavior of those around them. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway, with the insight that resonated most deeply with you. And remember, understanding people does not make you cynical, does not make you cold or distant. It makes you effective, empathetic, and ultimately more powerful in the best possible way, because it allows you to navigate the world with clarity and compassion. See you in the next video, where we will continue to explore the fascinating complexity of human behavior and the hidden forces that shape our lives. Until then, stay observant, stay curious, and never stop learning about yourself and others.